Everybody seems to hide themselves.
So here we are, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And if you weren't able to come, thanks for taking the time to watch this on the Facebook group. And we have here with us now. I meant to ask you earlier, Peggy, how do we say your last name?
Wirgau.
Wirgau. Okay.
We're going.
All right.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, that's
Easy.
And I should have Terry introduce you because I believe you two met at the
yes.
Titanic
Yes, we
conference.
did.
I'll
Go
do-
ahead, Terry.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our event, our special with Peggy Wirgau. She and I met at the 2021 Titanic convention in Pigeon Forge. We just met. We started talking Titanic and talking about her subject. It's called The Stars in April. I have the book right here if everybody can see it. It's a novel about the coming of age story of Ruth Becker. She and her baby brother Richard, I think his name is Richard, becomes sick, and then her mother and her sister Marion take a trip from India, and her father is I believe he's a can't remember the domination, but I think he's a Lutheran minister, and he's on there for a missionary, and the family go. She doesn't want to leave her father, and she's also upset because she can't play in this. She wanted to play in a festival on her violin, and anyway, she leaves her friend and all that. She and her family go on the trip. They go on train, bus, a ship, and all the way to Southampton to travel on the Titanic. She meets all these interesting people. It's really a coming of age story. And I'd like to present Peggy Wirgau.
Thanks, Terry. I wondered if anyone here has read the book besides Terry. I can't see.
Oh, they have
Charles
to
and
read.
Sonia
There's like
and
a
Riley,
hand.
but
You guys can push the reaction button, and then there's like a little hand. You just read.
okay. How do I see that?
Yeah, well, they all have their cameras off, but next to their
Okay.
name will show up. Like I'll do one so you can see what it looks like. So do you see a little hand by mine?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
That's a nice.
Does that mean you read the book?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle
Okay,
of too
all
many
right.
books at once.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I can tell everyone a little bit more about it if that.
Yeah, do you want to tell more about the
Sounds
book, or do you want to go into your presentation?
Unless you had a different plan.
No,
No,
that
I
sounds great.
think that's what we planned.
Okay. Well,
Well, maybe everybody should introduce
Charles, hi.
themselves to Peggy so she can get to know you. Then you can.
I think
Would
I
you like to do
muted
that?
everyone. So she can go ahead. I already muted.
all
Okay.
right. All right. Well, I first heard about Ruth Becker in 2012 during the 100th anniversary because I was looking through a list of the passengers and mostly the children, and I noticed her because she was on her way to Michigan, where I was from, and I read a little bit about her. She was daughter of missionaries. They were from Ohio, and Reverend Becker was from Michigan originally, and so they were on their way back to Michigan, but they were missionaries in India working in an orphanage, and Ruth was born there. And in 1912, her little brother Richard, who was 2 years old, was sick. He'd been sick off and on since he'd been born, and the doctors in this little village, Guntur, didn't know what to do for him. Finally, they told Mrs. Becker that really she should take him home to the United States. And Ruth's mother saw that, I think, as an opportunity to leave India because she had never liked it. And Reverend Becker was not able to leave the orphanage. He asked permission and they wouldn't give it to him, but they decided to have Mrs. Becker take the children. So that was Ruth, age 12, Marion, age 4, and Richard, who was 2. And the reason I wrote the book was because as I read more about her, I saw that she was separated from her family in the lifeboats. She was stuck in a boat by herself with strangers, and yet she was able to share blankets and a handkerchief with people in her boat, and she comforted someone that didn't even speak English. And so I just thought about her and thought, you know, how could a 12-year-old girl do these things, and what was she like, and did she even want to leave India? And I just started to think about all those things that weren't in the books and the articles that I was reading. So I put all that together with what we knew and decided to write the book. And so it's based on a true story, although it's historical fiction. So there's a lot of, you know, fictional elements to it. I added in people that I think she may have met, and her journey from India to Southampton is in there, quite a bit of it actually. And you know, I knew she would have met people along the way and probably got in trouble and got sick, and things would have to happen. So that's what it's about. And then on the Titanic, in the story, she meets a third-class passenger and they go exploring. And then, you know, everything that happened with from the collision onward was really taken from her recollections and those of the other survivors, especially those that were in Lifeboat 13 with her. So there's more to it than that, but that's the basics.
She was in the same lifeboat as Caldwell's, correct?
Yes, Caldwell's.
So I remember the part where she talked about there was some, I can't remember exactly, but I think there was something about she mentioned that there was a man with a baby, and I'm like, that's got to be Albert Caldwell. It had to be.
That was them.
Sure it was.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out to you that we have with us Sonia Bera, and she's here from India.
Hi, Sonia. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
I don't know if she wants to say hi, but I thought,
Thank
you know,
you
that
for
was
having me.
That's great. What time is it there?
2:38 a.m.
Pardon?
2:38 a.m.
2:30 in the morning? Oh, bless your
Yeah.
heart.
she wanted to see you and meet
Oh,
you.
that's nice. Well, I have pictures I can share unless anyone has
Yeah.
questions now, or
If
Think we'll
anyone
have
has
questions
questions,
now. You
there's
want
like,
to save them for later, Jill?
oh, that's true. That's a good idea. Save them for after you.
Would you like to do the
okay, I'll go
presentation?
ahead.
Okay.
It's just some pictures of the Beckers and things we know about her.
And we're doing this on Ruth's birthday. Peggy has such a great idea to have this on Ruth's birthday. Oh, Lindsay Littleson's here. She's another author.
Okay, everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is the book, the cover, The Stars in April. This is Ruth. She was about 15 when this was taken, so after she arrived in America, but that's a very well-known picture of her. Start here. This is Reverend Becker and Nellie, her mother, and Ruth in the middle. Ruth was born in 1899 on October 28th, so today is her birthday. She was the first white child that was born in the village of Guntur. And there was a cholera epidemic around that time. Nellie and Alan, her parents, helped a lot of the victims. And one thing that Nellie remembered was that they had so many people dying, and they were actually cremating them in the streets. And she saw someone being cremated right in front of their house. And so that was not something she was certainly used to. It was very upsetting. But later on, they were moved to the orphanage to help with the orphanage. Now, this is some of the missionary families. Reverend Becker, can you see my arrow?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is Reverend Becker here in the back. And this is Nellie right here. And this is Ruth right here in the center. Marion and Richard aren't here yet. This is also in India. They were building home for the nurses. I think that's most of the nurses right there, probably. The Beckers are here on the right. This is Reverend Becker in his white shoes that he wore all the time. This is Nellie seated next to him, and she's holding Richard, and little Marion with the big white bow. Ruth is not in the picture here. So this is Ruth and Richard a little before they left India, and had to make that long journey. Now, this is a typical ship for passengers that were leaving India and going to Southampton. Their ship was called the City of Benares. It wasn't this one, but it looked a lot like this. It carried 400 passengers, and it made the trip in 29 days. This is the journey. In the book, I have a little different map, but they started out here on the right in Guntur, took the train down to Madras, and boarded the City of Benares and traveled all the way across the Arabian Sea and into the Red Sea, and long journey through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean up to Southampton. And of course, this is the Titanic. This is taken from shore in Ireland shortly before it departed. This is one of the last photographs of the ship. And another well-known photo on board, but I just wanted to have one to show the deck where most of the lifeboats were.
Peggy, do you mind if I comment for a second?
Sure.
Did you go back to that photo of the Titanic? Don't mind?
Yep.
This is very interesting because we're reading another book about a book for October. Yeah, I think our book for October is a book called Titanic Solving the Mysteries. It talks about a certain quote unquote smudge. And one of the things that's very interesting is that how the smudge is really how the light hits it because of
yeah, definitely.
you can see right there. It's the way the light's hitting it. And the way the ship was built because of the slats of steel or whatnot. That's where the so-called smudge is, but what that really is how the light's hitting it.
Oh, I see. mean, right in the, right in
I'm
the
sorry
center
about
here?
that, Jill. It just reminded me of something.
Yeah, because they, I don't know if you've heard about that, the coal fire theory, you know,
That
they
coal
had
fire,
fire.
yeah.
That they supposedly were claiming that the smudge was all the weakened steel from the fire, and it became
Was
a
just
big
the light.
theory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as much as just like, okay, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it
That's
just
all right.
reminded me of
Good to
something.
know.
That's good. That's the book we're reading in the other club, because we have like. the
Oh.
book
In our book club, yeah. Go on, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm
That's
sorry.
all right. I'm glad you did. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll skip back to this. This is the second class dining room where the Beckers would have eaten their meals. They splurged on second class tickets. And this room held 394 passengers. The seats were attached to the floor and they swiveled. And in the book, Marion has a good time swinging in her chair. But it was more typical of most of the first class dining rooms in a lot of the ships at the time.
Yeah, that looks really nice. Tablecloths and everything. And
Yeah.
folded things.
And this is a second class stateroom or cabin. Two beds with a little dresser. And then across from it would have been bunk beds or berths and a wardrobe. At least that's what Ruth remembered. Not all of the rooms, I don't think, had that many beds, but that's what they had.
Oh, that's a good description.
And of course, this is the staircase that in the story, Ruth and her friend managed to find this and take a nice long walk up to the top. These are the Navateel brothers, Michelle and Edmund. They were staying across the hall from the Beckers with their father. He registered under the name Hoffman because he was taking them to America unbeknownst to their mother in France. And they got to know the Beckers. They were right there across the hall. Michelle and Edmund were the same ages as Marion and Richard. So Ruth played with them, you know, they all played together. She pushed them around in the stroller on the second class promenade quite a bit.
That's something I never knew. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
See, with Titanic, you're always learning something new that you can study for years.
Yeah, and they survived.
Can you
I can tell
imagine
you
their
that
dad
story
playing
out
them
loud now if we have time, but I'll keep going. Of course, this is
At those Titanic conventions, I think they met up with each other, I think, didn't they? Those,
well,
never tell with Ruth
something
Becker.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me go back. I can talk about that now. Well,
oh, I'm sorry.
let me wait. I'll just wait and then we'll come
Okay,
back to
yeah, 'cause that's a conversation.
now
starter there.
I put the captain in here. This is a presentation I've done for school groups. So, you know, not everyone has seen him, but they like to see his picture. And the crew with Captain Smith there in the middle. Or the officers, I meant to say. This is a Pekingese that was a passenger on the ship. He was, his name is Sun Yat-sen, and he was, the owner was Henry Sleeper Harper from Harper Publishing. In the story, Ruth meets him and the dog, and he was one of the surviving dogs on the ship, but you can read more about him in the book. And this is Wallace Hartley, the band leader aboard. Ruth does meet him. He plays quite a role in her story. And I put in his violin. This is where it was on display, I believe, in Branson. And after it was found, and we were told in Pigeon Forge that it's currently back with its owner. Hopefully it'll come back, and I'd love to see it. Well, I skipped something. There we go. Okay, after the collision, the Beckers went up on deck and waited to be told what to do. And finally, they got the word that the lifeboats were going to be loaded. But while they were waiting, Mrs. Becker told Ruth, go back down to the cabin and get blankets, because they were all freezing and they thought they had time. And so Ruth obeyed her mother and went down 4 decks back to get the blankets, and came back up. And when she got there, she saw Marion and Richard and her mother being put into another lifeboat. And Ruth's, Nellie, her mother, screamed, Ruth, get in another boat. She realized at that point that she was leaving Ruth behind, but they had been taking Marion and Richard, and she needed to go with them. And Ruth showed up, and so they were in lifeboat 11. And Ruth said later that she turned and went to the next boat, and an officer picked her up, and she said he picked me up and dumped me in. And so she was in lifeboat 13. Now this was an artist's drawing of what happened after lifeboat 13 was in the water. In the foreground in the water is lifeboat 13, where Ruth is. And as it reached the water, the condenser on the Titanic burst, and this great flood of water hit the boat and got everybody wet and pushed it forward. And it made the ropes so tight that they couldn't work the davits up on the ship to let it go. Finally, someone had a knife. Ruth remembered that. They cut the ropes, but this was 15, lifeboat 15 coming down on top of them. Some of the passengers were actually able to reach up and touch it, and they thought they were going to be crushed. But as they cut the ropes, the water pushed the boat forward out from under 15 as it came down.
Thank you, Peggy, for explaining that, because I couldn't understand. For years I couldn't understand how 15 wound up nearly crushing 13. Now I understand. Thank you.
I
appreciate it.
know. It's hard to imagine.
Thank you for explaining that, because I'm like, I know it was chaotic, but they couldn't have been that incompetent.
Yeah, it was just a lot of things working against them there, but
So it was a condenser, and that water pushed it. Oh, now I got it.
that's the way I understand it. Yeah. So Ruth's boat, all the lifeboats reached the Carpathia. Ruth in 13, Nellie and Richard and Marion in lifeboat 11. They were eventually reunited on the Carpathia, and they reached New York. Nellie had sewn $100 into her coat in India, so she was able to buy some clothes and things before they took the train to Michigan. And she had been so traumatized by the whole experience that she told Ruth, don't tell anyone you were on the Titanic. And Ruth had given a couple of interviews when they first reached New York herself, because your mother didn't want to talk to the press. But then she told Ruth, no more, don't tell anyone. And so for the longest time, that was the way it was. It upset Nellie too much to talk about it, and it eventually became a closed subject. I think I skipped one. No, I didn't. Okay, but we'll fast forward to 1985. This is Ruth with the newspaper saying that they found the Titanic. She's in Santa Barbara here. Just to back up a little bit, she married and had 3 children, and really didn't talk about the Titanic very much, and even her children didn't know. They knew she'd been in a shipwreck, but didn't know it was the Titanic for a long time. And there was, they had they were going to have the 70th anniversary convention, and Don Lynch was living in California. He was in the Titanic Historical Society then, and he found out that Ruth was in California, and he contacted her and asked her if she would like to go. And she did decide to go, and she really enjoyed it. She remembered so much, and she loved meeting other survivors and all the people that were part of the Historical Society. So after that, she became quite involved, and she got to know a lot of the members, and they would visit her and talk with her, and she told them a lot of stories. Floyd Andrick, who I got to know a little bit, told me some stories that I was able to put into the book from her days in India, and little details about the Titanic. So that was very helpful in the writing. After this, I was going to tell you about the Navateels and the reunion, so I'll tell you that here. Ruth was invited to the 75th anniversary in Delaware, and Floyd Andrick was there, and his job was to meet Michel Navatel at the airport. He was flying in from France, and he picked him up in the limousine, and he told Ruth that he would meet her also. So he got her into the limousine, and he said to Ruth, do you remember those little boys that stayed across the hall from you on the Titanic? And of course she did. And she said, and I always felt so bad that they drowned. And somehow she never got the news that they had been found, or that they had survived. They were known for a while as the Titanic Orphans, because they were so little, and they only spoke a little bit of French, and nobody knew who they belonged to. Their father had perished, and it took some time, but they posted that picture I showed you in all the newspapers all over, and their mother recognized him in France, and she didn't even know that they were on the ship. And it all turned out okay. She came and got them. But Ruth never heard any of that. So she said to Floyd, I always felt so bad that they didn't make it. And Floyd said, actually, they did. And this gentleman here next to you is Michel Navatel. And he said it was just the best moment for him to see that reunion. There were a lot of tears. And at the hotel for the 75th convention, they were across the hall from each other again, just as they've been on the Titanic. So After that, Ruth took a cruise when she was 90 years old. She went with someone from the Historical Society and with her daughter. They took a cruise to Mexico, and it was in 1990. And the captain of the ship came and met her and thanked her for trusting him to get her to Mexico and back safely. But no one else was supposed to say that this was a Titanic survivor on the ship until they had a lifeboat drill. And if you've been on a cruise, you do that the first night and you kind of stand around and find out where you're supposed to go. And so Ruth was there waiting, and she said, I don't remember doing anything like this on the Titanic. And of course, word got out, and people soon knew there was a survivor, but she met them all and signed autographs and so forth. And then 4 months later, she passed away. So she was 90. And she was one of the people that asked to have her ashes scattered over the site of the sinking. So that is all I have for pictures.
Would you like to take
Any
questions?
other questions?
Anyone have a question? Raise your hand. Sorry.
So is the gentleman, I just blanked on his name, that you were with Ruth and Michelle, what, is he still around?
Floyd? Yes, he lives in
Yeah.
Michigan.
So was he able to read your book and like?
Yes, he did. I sent him a copy, and I have his letter here. He said Ruth would love it, which really just made me happy, because you never know with historical fiction, you know, how somebody would feel about adding in things that were different. But he felt, you know, he knew her well, and she was a teacher, and I think, you know, she would have thought, you know, I did a good job. And that's when he told me about the cookies. And he also sent me, for a little souvenir, a card that she had written to him. And in the card, she thanked him for a birthday card that he'd sent her. And she said, you know, she knew he was going on a cruise, and she was so envious. This was before her cruise. So that's kind of fun to have. She's beautiful handwriting, like a teacher. So
Her too is just delightful, because Ken Marshall, you know, his birthday is with Ruth too. So I'm sure when they finally met and had that connection too, because I heard they were very
actually, in the note I have, she said, Ken and I have the same birthdays. And Floyd knew, you know, she was talking about all these guys. She knew, you know, their first names.
Yeah.
So I think they really loved her. They enjoyed visiting with her, and she enjoyed that too, you know, finally being able to tell her story and, you know, share it with everyone.
Because you don't know what kids remember, and then to see that this person you thought died all those years ago and felt, because imagine being 12 years old, playing with children, and then knowing something horrific just happened. Not even just hearing about it on the news. Like, she watched something horrific happen, and she knew that those children, or she thought she knew, you know, could you imagine the emotion that she felt when she learned they lived? That's such a beautiful story that I never knew. You really have taught us a lot.
As much as we, you know, read about it and study all these passengers and crew members, you know, there's just so many incredible stories. And someone was saying the other day about how It sounded like there were a lot of different reactions, you know, as there would be if something happened to us. You know, some of us would just take it in stride and go on with our lives, and you know, others might not be able to handle it as much. And you know, he talked about survivor guilt among some people, and you know, poor Nellie, I think it just changed her. Reverend Becker told Ruth later, she was growing up, your mother wasn't like this before the Titanic. You know, it really just devastated her to watch all of that. And I think maybe today she could have gotten help, but they didn't do those things then, didn't realize maybe that some counseling might have helped, but instead, you know, they said, don't talk about it, don't think about it.
Imagine you had to hold that all in.
Yeah.
Imagine if Frankie Goldsmith's parents told him that, and he said the
Yeah.
baseball field fans sounded like the people in the water. You know, how do you tell
Yeah.
something like that?
That's right.
Ignore that. Wow.
Yeah.
Everyone, there's a reaction button at the bottom here, and you can click on it and then click the raise your hand button if you want to ask a question. We were just talking about the Navatel boys the other day, a group of us, and they said, can you imagine being an adult and just putting your kids, they didn't have any chaperone or anything, you know, they were just, and I don't know why the dad didn't fight for it, or why, I don't know if it was, you know, light tolerant side where it was women and children only, why they would, you know, what was their plan for them, you know, are they just gonna go hail a cab
Cannot
and
imagine.
get a hotel? They were just little kids, you know, like
Unbelievable. Yeah.
they would just let them.
Mhm.
I think he almost stopped a 13-year-old kid from getting in the lifeboat. I was like, come on, man.
You know, so it's amazing.
He's not my
that they-
favorite officer. But
And the poor mother too, you know, God, what? Somebody glancing at a paper, that's my children, what? I can't even imagine. And then all the
Right.
time it probably took her, because these are things people don't talk about. She had to go and get money to buy a ticket. You know, it wasn't like today where you just do it on your
Well,
phone,
I
jump
think,
on a bus.
yeah, I think I read that the White Star Line let her come over and claim them. At our conference in August, we heard from a young lady who works in New York City. What was her position?
I don't remember her name, but she worked for some sort of what did she do? She worked for like, wasn't an orphan type thing, but it was she was some sort of I don't know. I don't think anything.
I just can't remember. That's
I
terrible.
can't remember what
But
she did, but
she was able to look at all of the old records to see what actually happened to the Navateel boys, who took care of them and how they found their mother, and you know, they didn't want them even then to just have anybody say, hey, I'm their father or mother. They wanted to make sure.
I wonder how long it took her to get back to them. You know, I wonder how long she had to wait for a ship to get on. And
Yeah, I don't remember.
must have been agonizing
Yeah.
as a mom. Like,
Mm.
wow, that
Yeah.
was such a special reunion. Then did Ruth, they stay friends when, you know, into their.
Probably, yeah. I have a photo of that convention with all of the survivors. There were 8 or 9 then, and Ruth was 87, and Michelle Navratil was 79 at that reunion. It's amazing that so many traveled so far at, you know, when they were getting up there in age, you know.
they were kind of like celebrities back then. You know, a Titanic survivor.
so.
Wow.
They were, and they would raise the money and they would pay for their travel to come in. And that's what I understood. If they could come in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think so.
Imagine that, Edward Kamuta, and when he was young, he wrote a letter to every one of those survivors, trying to get them together. And how Walter
What'd you
Lord,
say?
Edward
Michelle?
Kamuta, wrote all those survivors. He
Yeah.
saw a movie in his father's movie theater, and it was on Titanic, and his dad did not approve of him studying. His sister told me, and
you're asking about the RMS
sorry.
Titanic.
So she's like, the Titanic. Anyway, his dad wanted him to do his studies, work in the movie theater, and so he had to secretly, this is what his sister told me, write these letters to these survivors. And it wasn't until his dad passed away, but that he was able to come out about it. But he got all those a lot of survivors together.
How was he
So
able
that's
to
great.
to get a contact with them? How did he find out where their addresses were?
I think it was that 1953 movie. I think it came with a program and it had names.
Oh, okay.
But he still had to do research. This
My
is before
gosh.
computers, and how do you do
Yeah.
research back then? You have to go through
Yeah.
phone books.
Yeah, the old
I'm
fashioned.
hoping to find Ruth's family still. I've tried, I'm sure there's grandchildren out there, and I spoke with the curator of the Pigeon Forge Museum in August, and he thought that maybe they could find a way to reach out to them in some way. I'd love to meet them. Hopefully they'll like the book. But he thought that maybe they would have, some things that they could, add to her story, or, they might even do a little display of some sort about Ruth. And then they also were considering doing an exhibit maybe of all the missionaries that were on Titanic, because there were several, and present their stories. So
Now,
we'll
did the
see.
little brother and sister, did they ever become famous? Ruth is so famous and so popular. You tend to forget that she had younger siblings, and no one can say, oh well, they were little, because Milvina Dean became very important, and she was just
a baby. Yeah.
I
I don't know if they really cared about it that much. It doesn't sound like they did. Marion didn't live long, and she died in her 30s. And Richard did recover from his illness. They thought he had viral meningitis. So he eventually, recovered from that, and he lived to his 60s. But I don't know. I think the mother had something to do with it. We don't talk about this, and so they just went on. But it was Ruth that really remembered, and was able to to share her story later. So
the saddest part for me, I'm sorry. The saddest part for me in the book was, do you remember the part of the book where she Ruth goes to
yeah, no spoilers.
well, it's a sad part though. It's just awful.
Is it a spoiler?
While she's getting, it's where she sees her friend, while the ship's sinking. The third class passenger.
I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't read
Right,
it.
I won't tell what happens. But that part got me.
It was hard to write some of those scenes, but I knew I had to do it.
Yeah, I guess my question is, were there some scenes that were hard to write?
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to get it right. And I thought a lot about and prayed about, what was it like, and tried to get it as accurate as I could from from those who had, you know, those that survived and talked about it, and you know, and what Ruth remembered, because Ruth wasn't everywhere. She experienced it where she was as a 12-year-old, and so that's what I tried to you know, bring across.
Yeah.
And what is the age range again for your book? Recommended
Well,
about it?
you know, Amazon somehow said it was from 9 to 18. Like you can't read it after, you know, after an
Wow, but
18.
Gary loved it. So
I don't know why
that's
they do that. Our publisher, the publisher said 10 and up.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And that seems like that's hitting right. The 4th and 5th graders really like it. They like Titanic, and they can, you know, empathize with Ruth, and you know, certainly adults are finding it still a good story and interesting.
Yeah. I can't
Well, I
wait.
definitely empathize with her. I definitely.
Yeah.
Now, Sonia, being from India, was going to try to keep her eye out and see if there was any.
Do you have any questions, Sonia? Have you seen the book yet? Are you able to get it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Is that
Does
far
anyone
from
else have any questions?
where Ruth lived, Sonia? Is that far from you in New Delhi? Sonia's in New Delhi. I didn't know
Oh,
if
that's
that
a
was-
long way from New
Yeah,
Delhi.
it's like northeastern part of India, Andhra Pradesh, and I'm living in Delhi, capital. So it's far
Yeah,
away
because
from
you're.
my home.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Guntur is a big city now, I think. But back then it wasn't much.
Wow. Neat.
Changed a lot.
Question.
Have you been to India yourself?
Ooh.
I have not.
No.
No, my daughter has.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you like it?
Yeah. Yeah. She did. She did. She was just there a couple weeks.
Oh.
I can't remember what part.
Oh,
Yeah, big place.
Several places.
you.
I don't know if anyone else has a question. You guys can wave your hand or click that little reaction hand raise button. We can make a heart.
Now there's something down here on the chat. Let me look at that.
I put your website there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
I think that's
new
just you.
Peggy has a new web page on our website.
Okay. Well, I'd love to hear from everyone if you read the book. And also in about a month, I think the audiobook is coming out. That's in production right now.
Oh yay! I love audio. Now,
And-
did you read it? Is it your voice?
No, I'm not doing it. We got a pro.
Oh, okay.
And I've talked with her, and it's so funny to know these people, you know, I think I know them, and then to hear Ruth, you know, talking, and but this gal does all the many accents so well, all the voices. So I think it's going to turn out really good.
Oh, that's, and then you can get the ebook for $3.99 at Finances.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I wanted to mention that Lindsay Littleson's here. She's our author of the month for next month. I don't know if she wants to say
Yes.
hi, author to author.
Can't see her.
Hi, Lindsay.
Oh, hiya, all the way from
She's up
Scotland.
next, right?
Oh,
Scotland.
I really enjoyed the book. I loved it. I just felt Ruth's mum was so silly to send her down to get these blankets, though I just can't get over the fact she did that on a sinking ship.
She did. I know. She probably regretted that.
I can imagine.
yeah.
Sitting there on the Carpathia wondering if Ruth actually got in a boat or not, because she really didn't know. So
But it's
And
okay.
then to
Remind
get
me of-
into a lifeboat when you're one child, because that's what happened with the Allison family. They would not get into the lifeboats because they didn't know where Allison was. And that must have been really hard to get into a lifeboat when you knew one of your kids was out there.
Can't imagine.
One
Yeah.
of the, reminds me of one of the, I can't remember her name, Mary or something, whatever her name. One of the surviving Attergool 14, she went back for her hat. I'm like, a hat? She survived. She got into a lifeboat. She stepped out
Thank
of her, she
goodness.
go get the hat,
That's
all the way
so
down to
lucky.
third class, came back up and got into another lifeboat. I'm like,
Can you
oh.
imagine the
That's a
maze of
lucky
getting to
girl.
third class
Yeah.
too? I mean, that wasn't easy. I don't actually know how difficult it is to get from second class to the decks, but I do know that third class was really. Do you know much about how difficult it is to get to the boat decks from second class?
Well, I've looked at those diagrams, as I was writing the book and trying to get the right decks and directions, and it's so complicated. So
We'll have to try that because we have
had
the
to be really difficult, especially
oh,
for those
no.
that didn't know the language and didn't know what was happening.
Because I always think of the Titanic movie when Rose is like, "Do you know where the he's like, well, then you go out in the hall and you make a left, and then
That's
take
right.
a couple paces and make a right." How do you remember all that without writing it down?
That's right.
They didn't have
And that's
GPS
what
back
it
then.
is.
I definitely would have needed GPS to go around that ship.
Somebody just take me up, please. 'Cause yeah, but I love your research because I thought I read a question on Facebook and that said, "Oh, did she study Ruth?" And I said, "Yeah, I think she did." And I think this is definitely verification because you knew a lot about.
It was a lot of research.
And you met her.
And I've found out things after I wrote it, that I could have done a little bit differently, but
Well, maybe
that
you could do a
happens.
stars in April too.
Oh, yeah, that was my next question. I was wondering if after you wrote the book and had it published and all, did you discover things that you might have gotten wrong, or you might have, well, maybe I should put this in the book, or
nothing big, I don't think,
Oh,
but
okay.
well, just the city that they took the train to
Okay.
was actually Madras, and I did
Oh,
not
okay.
know that when I wrote the book. I used Cochin because it was a port, and
Okay.
I just
I
didn't
got you.
know. I thought, well, maybe this is it, and I didn't know if I could find out. And then later, I found
Oh,
out
okay.
it was Madras,
I
but
see what you mean.
not a big mistake.
Well, that's neat. Well, if you ever do another edition, second editions always seem to just notice
corrections.
in the book club when someone announces the second edition of my book is coming out, everyone's like, "What? Where?" So they do buy second editions if you're ever wondering, because I noticed with the numbers.
Well, we'll see.
They like updates. and you're an author of other books. Are they all historical fiction?
Oh, this is the first one that's been published. And the one that I'm working on next, I have just a good rough draft of it done, and it's going to be a while, but that's based on a true story also. And it's set during the American Revolution in New York City in 1779. So that is a lot of research.
What made you decide to write this book?
I like true stories, and I like historicals, and I was just drawn to this whole thing. So
We're glad you did.
I'm in deep now. So
Well, a lot of children's books these days, and they don't really focus on passengers. They really focus on the ship. So kids are like, "Ooh, Titanic," and there's just a whole other part of Titanic for them to learn about. The passengers that were on there and all their stories. That's what got me hooked. Like, wow, can you imagine? lose all your belongings and loved ones, and you're just plopped off
Yeah.
in New York. And how do and we have stress over, my car won't start this morning. Like that's amplified stress to the,
Right.
and then they just lost a lot of them lost their husbands, and they had to.
Mhm.
The Titanic is a bigger subject than people realize. It's not all just about the story, the passengers, we can talk about the ship itself, we can talk about, the time, because in this book that we're currently reading, it talks about the time and also all sorts of things. It's a way bigger subject.
Mm.
Yeah, really, and
It's
yeah,
Really
realize.
interesting.
it is. Wow, we look
Food,
forward to it.
there's food on the Titanic,
A lot to
clothing.
learn.
Well, there's,
So much to learn. Yeah, that's our subject next month with the food and dining. Book club. I guess we could have done that theme with the younger kids. Actually, there's a couple members that have put on Titanic dinners, and I don't know if you saw the little
Really?
Clayton with his little Titanic costume that he
Yes.
made.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So cute. And then his mom's making him a Captain Smith's outfit to wear to school, and
Oh
she's
my
making
gosh.
all the medals.
Aw.
and things.
Aw,
Isn't that cute?
That's so nice.
I love the little kids are so cute. We took them through the Vegas exhibit through Zoom, and I swear they must have picked up 9 errors. That's not the Titanic's blueprint. That's the Olympics.
Wow.
Or
Yeah.
they got those facts
Cool.
wrong. It was
Got
really
this wrong.
impressive.
That's
They're
great.
our historians of tomorrow.
That's great. When I was in Michigan, visiting right after the Pigeon Forge conference, I spoke to a couple of school groups, and one was all 5th graders, and none of them had read the book yet. They were all there to buy it, which was nice, but they knew a lot about the ship and about different passengers. They didn't know too much about Ruth, but they had good questions, and they were very well thought out. They the librarian there, she said they like disasters, and they read a lot of the I Survived books.
Oh yeah, because they have an I Survived Titanic, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the right age to get it in.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
it's so nice to see that they're keeping this story going, and keeping their memories alive, as we say.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and every now and then I'll poll the members, when did you first get interested? It was either James Cameron's movie or when they were 7, and 7 just
There's
keeps
something
popping up. So something
Yeah.
about that age range that just seemed to be the
about that.
popular
Not for
age.
me. I did not know about it when I was 7. Maybe when our kids were growing up. Oh, there's
Well,
Kim.
when did you hear about it? Do you remember? What brought you to Titanic? Because I feel like Titanic
Well,
calls us like, come here.
yeah, I think, I knew quite a bit about it, and I'd seen the movies, a couple of movies. We had books at home, but I wasn't especially drawn to it. Hi, Kim.
Kim has a question. Oh, so when you're done, or she's just giving a heart.
Yay.
Hi, Kim, welcome.
Can't see you, can't hear you, but that's okay.
Oh, so when was that again? Sorry, I got distracted when the doorbell rang. It gives me a bell.
When I learned about Titanic, I just gradually.
Yeah.
As
And
an
then when did you
adult more
become?
than as a kid?
When did you become fascinated with Ruth's story? Because obviously,
Well, and in 2012, as I said, when I learned about her, and learned what she did in the lifeboats and so forth. So I think I learned about her before I knew I wanted to write a book, because I'd been writing kids' stories and articles and didn't think I'd write a book. And then
So this is the first one you had published? Because I thought you said you wrote other stories. I guess I didn't realize that you didn't publish them.
yeah, a few of the stories were published, but this needed to be a book, and I dove in. So
Wow.
it took a long time, 9 years, and Kim was part of that. Kim is raising her
Kim's raising her hand. Let's thank you, Kim. You're our first hand raise here.
question.
Okay, there you go. I was muted. Can you hear me?
Sorry
Can you hear
about
me now?
that.
I hear you.
Okay, host, check make sure you got unmuted if you want other people to chat. But hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I
was
told them
trying
to raise their hand and I would unmute them. But
Okay, cool.
No one raised their hand before you.
Oh, okay. Yay. Yeah, I'm here to participate, but I'm just listening also.
So tell us
Okay.
your story. How are you connected, the two of you?
Peggy, why
Well,
don't
Kim
you
probably
take
has a
that.
different version than I do. Let's see, how can we make this short? It was, I don't know what year it was. I was working on the book. I met Kim at a writer's conference. She was an editor with Zondervan, and I liked her, and I knew that she liked the story, and I contacted her sometime after that, but she was no longer working at Zondervan, so it was a little hard to find her. Eventually caught up with her. I really wanted someone to help me because I was submitting the story and not really getting any good response. So Kim and I got together and started working on a lot of edits for years. A lot of edits.
3 years of editing.
At least, yeah.
Just with me.
Wow.
Feels longer than that. But eventually we had a good enough book to start submitting it, which Kim did. And you know, many submissions and rejections later, finally got an acceptance, I guess like 2 years ago now. And took a long time, a lot of work. So
Thank you. I
think it
can give
turned out
a
okay.
little, I can add on to that just a little bit.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, while I was still at Zondervan, I immediately fell in love with Peggy's writing. It was the writing of the story and the imagery and the prose-like language. And I fell in love with this book. And at the time, Zondervan was undergoing a merger, and it was just, I actually had proposed to my other editorial team to bring the book to the board, but we did not bring it to the board at that time. It was rejected. And so Peggy contacted me after I'd stopped working there. I was freelancing for about a year, and she and I together worked on this book with blood, sweat, and tears. And it was almost accepted
Lots of
at least
tears.
a dozen times. But we were able to get feedback from all of these people that just made it such a stronger story. And I do believe in God's perfect timing, and it was a matter of finding an editor who believed in the book as much as I did and Peggy did. And that's what happened. And it was literally, we edited for 3.5 years and I submitted for 3.5 years. So that's how long this book took, not including all the time Peggy spent writing it before she reached out to me.
Oh, so this is a good question for you two. We have some young people in our book club that want to write books. Do you have advice for them?
Peggy.
Oh, well, it is a lot of work. You just need to get a really good story and make sure that it's you know, the story you want to tell. But I think it helps to go to, you know, some writers' conferences. There's certainly a lot of free classes and help online, a lot of writing books. I did all of that. I'm still doing it. I'm still learning and trying to improve how I, you know, how I write a scene or make a character real. And there's a lot of work to it.
I think that's a great
So-
question too. For young writers especially, I would also say keep writing. Just write, and whatever it is, write. And there's so many opportunities now out there for writers because of technology. And also for younger writers, publishers really like books written by younger children. So if you wanted to get really crazy, you could actually try your hand. But if you think it's actually just writing. And sometimes I tell kids, like, the stories you do for your classrooms, you could actually submit those to a magazine or an online page that you follow. And even if you don't get paid for it, it's a writing credit, and it just starts. And it's a slow process. And I would recommend anybody who wants to be a writer should plan on having a day job.
Mhm.
So there you go.
I remember Don Lynch said that once when we interviewed him. This is not your career. You can't live off of this. You have to have a different job. That's good
But-
advice. Thank you.
I have
What
a
about
question.
getting sources for photographs and information? And then, sorry, Terry, I'll let you go next. Is that difficult because you just can't put any pictures without permission? Or
I
That was
didn't
a-
quite.
The
sorry.
getting the photos for the book, Peggy. The
Oh.
process of getting the photos. Yes.
Yeah.
Let her know about that one.
it's really hard, isn't it? I heard.
Well, I had, there were a few that I used in the book that were public domain. You can use them. There were a few that I had to get permission for. It wasn't too hard. The ones in India, they belong to the mission board that the Beckers worked with, and they were great. They gave me permission for those. There were pictures out there that I wanted to use that I couldn't find the source for, because you can, it looks like it's the source, but it really isn't. They got it from somebody else. And so you just go down all these rabbit holes to find who they belong to, and they can say no. And there was one I showed you today of Ruth holding Richard. I've gone ahead and used it in my presentations because it's not being published, but the owner asked me, you know, he didn't want to give me permission because that's his picture. So that's what you run into sometimes. So I didn't get to have as many as I would have liked.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's enough online that are, you know, being used all over.
Go ahead, Terry. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. I write blogs for the Titanic Book Club website. I want to know how to improve my blogging, I guess.
I like your blog.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I think you just got to read a lot of blogs. But I think you do a nice job.
I also discovered through the book club that the Titanic, of course, when I was talking about how many subjects it covers, evidently has another connection. I mean, the Titanic has so many connections to lots of things. Evidently has a connection to Barnum and, pronounced the darn circus, the Barnum and Bailey circus. There was a passenger, first class passenger named, last name is Shepherd. somebody posted
Wow.
a video on there. He was from the Titanic International TIS, whatever their
Okay.
name is. He was on a grave of a guy named last name of Shepherd. He was part owner of the Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Wow. I don't think I
How
ever
about
heard
that?
that. How about that?
Crazy. I mean, there's horse racing connections. There's figure skating, Holocaust connections. Well, you remember when we went to
Yeah.
the thing there, they had the Holocaust.
Mhm.
Have you
It's quite
visited?
interesting.
Oh, sorry, Terry. Thought you
Go ahead.
Have you visited? His name is Howard. He has a group. It's called Titanic Family Members, and I don't know if you've tried looking for
Oh,
family members there, but he's got a lot of family members in his group.
really?
And also, you could probably even ask him because he told me he has a spreadsheet with information
Man.
about the family. So whenever they join,
Oh, wow.
types it. He has a lot of information. He told me.
So is that a Facebook group or a
Yeah.
website?
Facebook group. I think it's called
Titanic family members?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I had no
I feel
idea.
like
Howard.
there's so many connections that we don't even realize. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why it's such a timeless subject. And for blogging, it's still so timeless. So, I also recommend sharing other people's books about the Titanic, just because sharing the book club and also it's a great way to gain readers, followers. It's like sharing the love. And then I don't know, anytime you hear a cool story about the Titanic, I just post and share, hashtag Titanic, hashtag Titanic love, hashtag Titanic rocks,
Yeah,
It's,
definitely promote it. You have to definitely, because there's so many Facebook groups. So if you're not really promoting, they're just
Yeah.
gonna get lost and, even like
and,
team members.
and I think Peggy said earlier, it's like learning. It's still learning, and writing is
Yeah.
a craft, and
Yeah.
we still learn it. And now with technologies, there's all these new things. And so how do you stay on top of all of those things? Well, you don't. You just try. And then but little by little you start to be connected with more groups. And I've been fascinated by the groups. I think joining groups on all these platforms is a really big deal now, because then you've got people who are saying topics, and so when you make a post, you can actually share it to different groups. So it's kind of a newer thing I've just realized, in a way to help promote, if a blog post, if I
Mhm.
make a blog post, I can go on Facebook or Instagram and say, go check out my blog post, and then share it with groups as well. So that's been interesting.
Get more exposure. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's true. That would get your blog out there, Terry, if you want more readers.
Like do a hashtag.
Yeah, and following people too. If you follow others, I know everybody really, in the big picture, most people want to help each other. Everyone's trying to help each
Yeah,
other,
keep up to
mostly.
date.
Every once in a while you might run into someone who's not so helpful, but you know what I do there? I said, the unfollow button's right there. I mean, you just let it go. I mean, but
But the blog belongs to the book club. Belongs to the book club website, so I don't know how we're going to follow anybody.
Yeah, well, so then you should be safe. I doubt you're going to have any kind of, controversial things there. But doing it through the book club, those are also ideas, just to join groups, follow other, as the book club, follow other people and books and publishers and people in the industry and Titanic museums. And
it's a great way to meet people. I think that's how I met
they will follow you back. Usually they'll typically
Yeah, 'cause
follow
we
you
do
back.
have a Twitter, so
Yeah,
I
they do.
can post her blog on Twitter, and then all the Twitter followers will see it too. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram.
Yeah, any platform, any of them that you're on, it doesn't matter. I feel like
Yeah. No, that's good.
it has to be enjoyable for people to continue it. And if you're offering a service, you're saying, here's some great information. You're providing a service, and that's how you gain followers and have a connection with your followers to take it a step deeper, you know?
Okay.
So thank you. That's all there. Okay, Peggy. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, I know, and I noticed the time, and we wanted to kind of wrap it up because it's already
Okay.
Or after
oh,
6 here.
yeah. Because I know she wanted it to be an hour, and it's like,
Oh, okay. Sorry, went over time.
oh, it's all right. I
That's
just
okay
noticed.
it's fine with me.
Aw.
But I appreciate you having me, Jill. And thank you
Oh,
everyone for jumping on.
Thank
you. Thank you for speaking to
I
us.
hope you get to read the book and let me
I know,
know
I'm gonna
what
put
you
a
think.
link again in the chat, and then I'll put a link out into. I'll put it in our newsletter too. Our newsletter is just about to publish at the end of the month for November. So we'll,
Okay.
if you're not a member of the newsletter, you can go to our website. There's a little tab for the newsletter. And I just put a link for Peggy's page on the website. So you should be able to scroll up and
Okay.
see all our different tabs. We have a lot of information on our website too. We're trying to build pages for all of our authors that are in our club because we're really a blessed book club to have.
You have a
so many-
lot of authors.
Yes.
and they
It's really
interact and
nice.
talk and they talk
Yeah.
to the members. I love it so much. So I want to
Big
give
family.
back to them because
It
they give,
really
you know,
is
you're
great.
giving of your time for free, and this is our way of giving back to them and appreciating them. And I have a
Well, you
long.
do a great job.
Truly.
It's
Thank
so-
you.
Oh, Lindsay did you get, oh, Lindsay raised her hand. Hold on. I saw your hand raised, Lindsay.
Was that a question?
No, it was just a little clap, but it was
Oh,
really.
thank you.
Oh, yay.
I so enjoyed it.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you
we
for
have
coming,
a-
Lindsay.
Thank you.
I'll have to hear about your book soon.
Now,
Yeah.
Kim, do you help other authors? Because I also have a group just for the authors. And I was when I created the group, I was hoping that authors would help each other, but there really isn't much of that. It's a lot of self-promoting. So I don't know if you're somebody that is ever looking for, because there'll be someone that'll come in like, I have this Titanic book, I need it translated into English, but everyone's just dead silence or you know, I'm looking
Sure.
for an editor because there's a woman right now working on a book about Frederick Fleet. She cannot find the publisher, and she's even asked, and there's no dead silence sometimes. So I think
Hmm.
I don't know if they just don't have advice or but I don't know if you're interested in new.
Well, thank you.
Oh.
That's I do have editing services, and I occasionally act as an agent. It's right now I have a lot of clients, so I'm not taking on any new agenting clients right now, but I'm
Okay.
all about helping other writers. And
Okay,
I
yeah,
try
then-
to provide free resources for writers and how to. And I'll say that one of the things that I can say that thanks to COVID, all the virtual webinars that are out there now that people can attend that normally we wouldn't be able to attend. And I have found them to be invaluable. Like I'm a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, or SCBWI, and they have free events on the craft of writing all the time.
So maybe that's
and-
something too you
Excellent.
could share with us. You could share in our little group there, because there are some people that just are lost. Like, "Oh, I get to work again."
It's very challenging, especially if you want to go with the traditional publishing route. It takes time, and it takes perseverance, and it takes finding the right editor. And I don't believe people all need an agent. You just need to do your homework, have a good cover letter. There's cover letter samples all over now. And finding a publisher that publishes books similar to those books and
That's
reaching
what I
out.
thought. I thought, well, if they like to publish Titanic books, maybe like history press seems historically the place to go.
Right.
If you got a book about, you know, the ship itself, they seem to really like.
There's so many publishers out there, and it's hard to keep track of them all. But I think that was at a conference and I heard author Linda Sue Park say this, and she was speaking directly to children's writers, authors. And she said, if I were to tell you today, the book you are working on may not be published for 10 years, would you still work on it? And so it has to be a perseverance and a passion and a lot of rejection and tears and blood. But it does, if you have that passion, if you're writing a story from your heart, not for a market, that's what makes the story stand out.
Great. Wow, you had a great team member there.
It only took me 9 years.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's what, you know, because I think a lot of children think, oh, I'll just throw together some paragraphs and throw it in a publisher, you know.
Oh, I could have
where
written that
that's not
picture
really
book
what
in a
you
week.
do.
I
Excuse
get
me?
that a lot. I get a
Yeah.
lot that I could have written that picture book so much better.
Yeah.
I
I'm gonna have a
know.
book out by the anniversary. I'm
Yeah.
like, you probably gonna need a little more time than that. This
Right.
is great. Oh, we're so happy. And on Peggy's our page, and you have your own website. Don't you? Isn't that what you
Yes.
shared? Yeah. So
Is that to me?
or Peggy. Peggy, did you have your own website? I can't remember now when I did your webpage today.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's on our
Um,
webpage, right? So
I
if they
think
go
it
to
should be. Yeah.
okay, yeah, because I put all the links.
PeggyWirgau.com. Yeah.
Oh, right, good.
Yeah.
So people can go and find it. And if they
Yes.
want to, is that
I
the best
forgot you
way?
were recording this.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I can turn that off. If you,
PeggyWirgau.com.
Peggy Wirgau. Okay.
And again, I can't tell you how much I loved your book. I just thought it was
Oh,
awesome.
Terry,
I
thank
highly
you.
recommend it.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
You're so excited. It's like,
Nice
I
of you.
can't keep blog about it. Awesome.
Well, thank you
so
again.
much for coming. We
Definitely
tried.
one of my favorite Titanic related books.
Ooh,
Wow.
that's
That and A
great.
Night to Remember.
Oh,
And
Ah,
gosh.
yeah,
and the sea of
That's,
glass.
that's a lot to
That's
live
how
up to.
Yeah,
that's
that's great.
awesome. Wow. That's
Thank you,
important.
And it was a
Peggy.
page turner. I mean, I just couldn't put it down.
Oh, I can't wait
Oh,
to
wow.
finish. I need to get to finish one
Thank
book
you.
instead of reading a bunch at once. But I will give you feedback. And if people want to
Okay.
contact you, they can contact you through your website there.
I lost you there. Contact me
through
at
your
my website.
Can they
I'm on
contact you at your
Facebook.
website?
and
Um,
Facebook.
But the website's PeggyWirgau.com, and Facebook is usually the one that I like the best, is a page, Peggy Wirgau Historical Fiction.
Yeah, okay.
And there's a Stars in April page too, The Stars in April.
Oh, I don't know if I'll share those in the event so people can find all your different links.
Okay.
I try to put
Thank
as many links as I can in the event so everything people don't have to look for things.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much, Jill. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want to say goodbye or anything?
See you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy Halloween.
Thanks.
Thank you.